unnatural. They felt more natural when they were unnatural. And this is the very engine of economics. We substitute, all advertisements are based on this. It looks like a beauty cream, but what it really is telling is you're ugly. Without this cream, you're ugly. Without this shampoo, your hair will be greasy. And of course, we're all intellectuals here, and you see an advert for, I don't know, some brand of shampoo. You don't go into the shop to buy it. Of course, we're too clever for that. But we all understand that it's important not to have greasy hair. So we bought the advertisement 120%. Doesn't matter what brand you buy, you must have nice and curly, whatever, hair. So, and that's why we have sort of government institutions, artificial institutions, that should try to work against the manic depressive thing. I think it's the very nature of economy, like it really, I think, could be described very well in manic depressive terms. What you give to a manic depressive patient or bipolar disorder is mood stabilizers. These mood stabilizers are supposed to increase your mood a little bit, in other words, decrease the amplitude of the mood cycle or the business cycle. They increase your mood in the bad times, but they also decrease your mood in the good times. That's why a lot of patients hate these pills, because they spoil their mood, which is exactly what they should do. And this is also something that we should do. Our problem today is not here. Our problem is here. Everybody knows how to solve the Greek problem. I mean, it's simple. A 7-year-old child knows. But how would you solve the Irish problem? Do you regulate the banks? Do you increase the interest rates? Do you forbid transfers of hot money or transfers of capital? This is something we don't feel goes well with our, it's like trying to, if you only focus on this, it's like trying to fix an alcoholic by curing his hangovers. If you make the hangovers go away, the alcoholic will drink more because it's not even going to hurt the person. So where do business cycles come from? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. The only thing that we can do is to some sort of create reserves, and we never know which one we hit. Yeah, okay, I don't think this is the last crisis. Maybe, I don't know, it's the most current, most recent crisis. I don't think this crisis will destroy us, but if we don't behave or don't change our institutions, the next one will. I am quite certain about this. We are already now tipping on the edge. Maybe we will, and if a new crisis comes, I don't know, something explodes somewhere, then that could really tip us over. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit more about the nature of the recent crisis? So this crisis and the Pharaoh's crisis. But it's very obvious that it's real. If you're eating coal, then skinny coals are a problem. But in the recent crisis, what happened? So what happened is that there is some GDP decrease, but we don't have a world war, we don't have natural disaster, we are living as we lived before. Nothing in the real life we feel has happened. So is there only a question of an abstract economic things, or is there a real life problem?
I think the whole crisis so far is happening 90% in the abstract. And all we are trying to do is to keep it there. In the abstract. Of course, people are losing money and some numbers and everything. But if you here would not read the newspapers, you really wouldn't notice, unless you are one of the few who became unemployed due to this. But otherwise, it really is sort of abstract. That's why a lot of people think it's just a media crisis. But it isn't. It's really, the crisis started in an abstract world because that's where our economy is, which is absolutely fine. 70% of economies in advanced world are abstract. How many of you create or live by creating something that you can actually knock on? Like this. Like you create a table, or maybe you create a spoon, or can you knock on? How many of you? So what do you do?
90.
Okay, so wonderful. Yeah, you can sort of knock on it, but it's tangible. But this was, few people raised their hands. Most of us, including me, and I suppose also you, live in an abstract world, and that's where most of our desires are satisfied. It's funny, I had this conference 2 years ago in Prague, and there was a director of one chocolate company. And he said, okay, well, the problem is we have this research, and people do not to increase the income from selling chocolate is to make it more abstract. Maybe make a small little chocolate with a Madonna signature, I don't know, and sell it for $100 when in fact the chocolate has. Even, okay, I'm from Czech Republic, so beer is very important. A bottle of Pilsner, which is beer, but real beer, it costs 30 crowns. And I had in the same debate, I had the boss of Pilsner Urquell, and I said, how much is the beer actually? What's the average price of half a liter of beer? And he said 1.2 crowns. So even if you're actually buying something real, such as real beer, you end up paying 90-something% for PR, marketing, research, abstract things. And that's why, of course, the current economy, from a philosophical point of view, is happening in the abstract.
Yes. So economists, some economists think that if there are some very small disturbances in terms of real processes like cows or manufacturing of cars or something like that, then the economy works in a way that it generates a much higher wave because there are non-linear effects, because expectations are important, because there is the financial sector where we know that banks lend much more money than they have generally, and then as we have seen, there is deleveraging, which leads to generally that the cycle becomes even more important. And also there are a number of historical examples when without generally any real thing happening, very serious crises appeared. So even the Great Depression, there were not really I don't know, plants exploded or war, but that was a financial problem. And also some of the most famous crises came from financial problems, that there was financial innovation. As a result of financial innovation, there were not suitable institutions which could fight against the negative effects of the financial innovations. The innovations themselves created some kind of upturn, and that after that, when it turned out that the innovation was in a kind dangerous, then a depression happened. So usually, on the one hand, very small things can be amplified by non-linear processes, or on the other hand, the financial system and expectations themselves can create this kind of cycle.
If you all agree that somehow this whole system of interest rates, credits and debt that we live in it's sick somehow. Is this crisis a chance to deconstruct it, cure it, or we just can't stop the world to repair?
So this is very interesting, because we seem to have 0 degrees of freedom. You talked about the end of history from not Ferguson, but the Fukuyama, thank you, who claimed that this is the end of history, we now know the perfect system, hallelujah. I would say, God forbid. Chinese have degrees of freedom, whatever they choose. We might like it, we might not like it, but they have degrees of freedom. Indians have degrees of freedom, we don't. Anybody who starts questioning the system ends up being labeled communist or something, which I understand. I come from sort of real socialism or quasi-communist country. So I know how dangerous this is, and I would be the last one to want to be labeled that way. But the interesting...
As I suppose, well, most of the people in the room are.
But that doesn't mean that we are stuck with the system and that we have 0 degrees of freedom, which is exactly how it is perceived. You talked about creative destruction and innovations. This is what the system is running, feeding itself from, yet it is not creative enough to creatively destroy itself and come up with an innovation of systemic nature. The question is twofold. Can it do it itself? Can it do it spontaneously? Can it cure like a body? If you break a bone, all you need to do is to maybe not move it for a couple of days and fix it, and the body does the rest. Some sicknesses, or if you have influenza, you just rest and the body cures itself. It creatively destroys the virus, and it maybe is even necessary. Some economists even argue that these sicknesses are necessary to cleanse the system. Some sicknesses are themselves uncurable. You actually need a government body or a doctor to cure it. And this is funny because you get all you get this. You are a social engineer. But we are all social engineers, only it's a system that we're used to. I mean, it's also constructed. There's nothing natural about democracy, and there's nothing natural about capitalism. Don't get me wrong, I think they're both great systems, but have a look at the history of our civilization. Democracy was maybe 5% of history. A little bit of some towns in Greece, and even those philosophers who lived in Athens looked up to Sparta, which wasn't democratic. And then we had nothing for many thousands of years, until now we have democracy. And similar, more difficult with capitalism. Capitalism today looks completely different from capitalism from the T-Ford times and Charlie Chaplin, the modern times, which is a perfect example of how the machines are crushing the humans. He ends up in this thing, and in fact, the more robot-like you are, the more successful you are, and all you. Go to the smallest village in the smallest country, people drinking beer, debating Europe. Europe has never been more alive than it is today. People are angry, people realize, even the working class people, even Davos people, even politicians, everybody realizes that the system is unsustainable. Now, we've been feeding off from sources that were not ours. Disturb me with a question and then I'll continue.
Yeah. But still in the midst of the crisis, people are living better than in most of history.
Yeah.
We all are here and around
absolutely.
the country.
Absolutely.
And the whole credit debt thing is being provoked with the constant need of growth, right? So because companies and nations are seeking ways for growth, and that's why they are investing through credit and kind of reinventing themselves all the time. Is there such thing as you know, enough GDP, enough EBITDA, enough salary, you know, to put it on a personal level.
Yeah.
Why, if you're a company and you've got solid profit, why wouldn't you be satisfied with that?
Yeah, so this is exactly what Marx said. Hate to quote him, but in his Communist Manifesto, he said, this system called capitalism has made us rich more than the kings of old time. I mean, the poorest person today is maybe 10, maybe 100 times richer than King David or any other king in medieval times. This is without a debate. We've created a machine or invented an animal, whatever, that can make us very rich. The problem is that it is not doing it in the right way. That we feel that it's, and let me just, can I use 5 minutes to answer the GDP problem? You know, if you have a wave, you have a level of water, and if you create a wave, you decrease the level of water around it. It sort of sucks the energy from around it. This, I think, is what we've done with our GDP. Just very quickly. We've taken energy from the past. This would be fossil fuels. I mean, no, foils. Fossil, petrol, the unrenewable. This is basically the energy from the past, which now our generation, 2, 3 last generations, have learned how to use. Just imagine our GDP without petrol. It would be half of it. It's not ours. But we don't know, and we know this is running to an end. Second wealth, which we have created, is geopolitical. So this would be past, this would be sort of horizontal. In first way, which I don't want to go, we kind of literally stole the treasures of the world into Europe. When we were a superpower, also, I think this is not fair. You know, we Europeans like to think that America is this evil superpower that's imperialistic, and we Europeans are very nice and postmodern, and we send kitchens to war zones. This is not really comparing, this is not a fair comparison. We should compare a superpower of America to superpower when we were a superpower. When Europe actually could do whatever it wanted to do, and we were evil. We not symbolically enslaved the whole world, we literally did it. We didn't, you know, all these things that America's doing today through economics, and we criticize, we actually did it through blood. But more importantly, globalization. Globalization has added tremendous GDP growth to us. And the funny part here, you say that we are better off. The funny part is, international trade is helping the poor countries, but it's helping the rich countries much more. In other words, stupid example, let's imagine here in Hungary or in Europe, we're ready to pay 100 units for a kilo of coffee. Here they're ready to sell it for 1 unit. The question is, how should we split the 99? Now, economics does not have an answer to it. Maybe we should say, well, let's do it half and half, or let's give the poor guy a little bit more money. But the final price, so the price could end up anywhere here. Here's demand, and here's, so the price could end up anywhere. The price usually ends up very, very much close to here. Why? Because he's a price taker and we're a price dictator. It's similar when you go to a poor country and you negotiate for a loaf of bread. This must have happened to you many times. So let's say you go to Egypt, for example. Now that you go to Egypt and you come to the local guy with the bread. How do you call these guys? A baker. And he says, I'd like to buy 1 loaf of bread. And he says, oh, wonderful, I will sell it to you for 100 units, like you are used to from Hungary. And you start screaming, oh, you thief, how stupid do you think I am? I know that the local price is 1 unit. And where will the price end? What price will you negotiate? It will be a price very close to 1, and you maybe give him 0.10 units as a tip because you're very, very cultured. This is what we do with fair trade, sort of. Why? Because you can walk away. You can walk to another. But anyway, my point here is, so it's serving us more than the poor, which we view that it is not fair. But the third problem here is that globalization is not over yet, but it is running out. And there'll never be, again, this time of huge opening up of borders, the collapse of Soviet, blah, blah, blah. So like here, fossil fuels are not over yet. but they are slowly coming, and also globalization. The third here is innovation. So let's just think like an inspiration is falling on our scientists and they invent an iPhone. Well, here I'm not very sure, but the amount of progress we had in invention in the last 15 years was unprecedented in history. All our kids, and some of you when you were younger, you played with the same toys that a Babylonian kid 6,000 years ago played. Wood, cloth, representations of the things that you see around you. My son plays with toys that I could not control 5 years ago. Where's the keyboard? Where's the mouse? Where's the cable? You know, what is this pot? iPod. So, okay, here maybe we come up with a new invention, but also maybe not. Maybe the iPhone 5 will look like iPhone 4, except that it will be blue. That's going to be a huge innovation. You know, black, white, blue. Okay. Fourth, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth source of growth was the future, and that's debt. We've simply tunneled, and I've talked about that. And this is also coming to an end. I think Germany has maybe 10 more years or 12 more years of stimulating the economy on debt, and then even they will collapse. In this sense, Greek, like always in the history, is not somewhere behind, they're ahead. Greece is 20 years ahead because they managed to go bankrupt 20 years before we do. So, you know, we should be really grateful to them and try to learn the lesson. What's my point here? You can already guess. It's GDP growth that we had in the previous times, first of all, wasn't ours. Second of all, it's running to an end. And third of all, we can't use these. So maybe only this one. Here I really have a question mark. But this is a hope. This is faith. But all these three things are running to a close. And the problem is we got addicted to this level of growth. So now that the United States of America are growing at 2%, oh, you know, that's not enough because we used to grow 4%. And nobody, well, yeah, so I would even question the whole question there, because this obviously wasn't sustainable and it wasn't ours. We lasered the energy from our surroundings into ourselves and thought that we deserve it. In the beginning, we were surprised by growth. Now we are addicted and we expect it. Why did the God of growth retake the crisis in religious sort of disappointment? Why did the gods of growth take their happy faces from us? What budget cuts, you know, how should we cut ourselves? What should we sacrifice in order to win the favor of the gods of growth again, so that they may show their favorable faces? The question is, can we survive without this unfair levels of growth? Because our society seems to be structured that maybe it cannot.
But the whole thing is not about the GDP and the economy, it's about happiness, which is the economy is an instrument of. The economy is the, you know, the science of the lower levels of the Maslow pyramid. So why shall our happiness depend on economy?
Well, that's a very good question, because you want to...
For the figure, if possible.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking that if someone would think at the end of the 19th century about what is the situation of the world, then what would he or she say? Okay, we have an unprecedented growth for at least 100 years, much higher than in the Middle Ages or before the Industrial Revolution. Okay, we are using up coal, so their coal will be over. So we have asked it from the past. Then there is globalization, but now Britain globalized all the world. It colonized everything. So maybe there are no more reserves in that sense. In terms of innovation, we all know the stories that the director of U.S. Patent Office has written a letter that everything was invented, which is useful, so we should close it in 1900. So maybe it was not, maybe the iPod. So we don't. we don't really know the nature of innovation. Of course, economists construct stories that called endogenous growth theory, in which they say that, so they can argue that innovation will be always that high, because knowledge itself is an input, so the more the knowledge is, the quicker it can grow, which may be true, maybe not, although there are some empirical results which are in line with it, and everyone was indebted at the end of the 19th century. So, of course, it's a nasty question, but I'm not sure that...
You're right, and this is exactly, in the book I talk about, this is Malthus, really, what you're saying, and what I'm saying is Malthus. Malthus had this argument, we're running out of soil, people are growing faster than blah, 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 so we must eventually collapse. Then there was this argument of technical innovation, which multiplied the fertility of crops, and he was disproved 2 or 3 times, Malthus. I suggest a Malthusian argument in the 4th time, and that is that our demands will always grow faster than our supply. So in this way, it will be always perceived. So whether it will run to a collapse or not, I don't know. You're absolutely right. I just yesterday I was reading through European thinkers. There's not one who didn't say that the civilization of Europe is running to a collapse. Everyone from 1300s, this is the last age, we will collapse after this because, I don't know, something, be it religious reasons or technical reasons or moral reasons. But I would still say that this is justified. They didn't run out of coal in the 90s. We know we're running out of it. And if we don't run out now, it will happen sooner or later.
No, but they didn't run out because they discovered the oil.
Yeah, well, maybe we discover new sort of
energy,
right. But maybe not.
Maybe not.
The reason why we're sitting here is that it didn't happen.
We see that there are more and more renewables
exactly.
in the world, and that innovation is quite quick in the sense that they may be able to replace fossil fuel.
But I'm saying the only reason why we are sitting here today is none of these things happened. If they did happen, and they did happen in smaller ways, I mean, we have empires that actually collapsed. The Roman Empire and other empires, and most of these empires, by the way, collapsed internally. So one of the arguments today for we need to grow because, I don't know, for example, China will take us over, or foreign competition will take us over, or we'll lose our competitiveness. Well, where was China when Greece was running bankrupt? Where was China when your country had to ask for bailout? It has nothing to do. We've sold stability and we bought growth. This was basically in a simplified manner. And we wanted growth so much, we got used to it, that we sold stability and we destabilized ourselves from within. So you could even, again, this is simplified, but you can even go as far as to say that we've grown ourselves to bankruptcy. And the reason for that is the addiction to those high levels of growth. Second argument I would use to battle this quite difficult contrapoint is technical innovation was always something in the past that we were surprised with. It took us by surprise. We have this, oh that's great, we have this, we have this, we have this. Always there was a fear that this will destroy the whole, we invented. What it took 1,000 men to do 80 years ago, we today need 138 persons to create the same value. And we thought, what are we going to do with the almost 900 people that leave unemployed? We today have growth not as a bonus, but as a conditio sine qua non. So the proper question, and I think in this we are unique, but maybe you will come up with an example. The question today is growth a result of market democracy? Or is growth a conditio sine qua non, condition without we cannot be, of market democracy? Because in the newspapers you read all the time, if we don't grow, the whole system will collapse. If so, then we need constant improvements of wealth to remain human beings. Otherwise we, and again I'm simplifying, otherwise we crush our skulls up against the wall like we always did. One last difference, if Greece or your situation or Ireland happened 50 years ago or more into the past, the only thing that other European leaders would be thinking about is how to attack that country. This would be the topic of today, this would be the topic of EU summits as, hey look, let's... Nobody's even thinking about it today. We try to help Greece and thus help ourselves. In the past we tried to destroy Greece, we would try to destroy Greece and thus help ourselves. So I really do think there is some shift in this, and it is again unsustainable. My main point was that that it was unsustainable, and I was answering the question that we need to change the system because we feel that these sources that we've been using are or can be potentially running out. The problem with fossil fuels is we don't know how to spread it because we don't know how many generations will come up after us. If we, for example, wanted to be fair and we would say, okay, there's 100 generations after us and then the Armageddon will come, then we can use 1/100th of the resources that we have, but we don't know this. So the question of saving it for the future is illegitimate because we don't know what to do. But even in our generation, it most likely looks like these reserves will run out. I mean, there is no argument that sooner or later these things are unrenewable. The earth is not full of petrol.
I fully agree with your second point that it is very important to see whether somehow the system can be reformed and what kind of reforms are possible. For example, financial innovation is always present, and then there are regulatory solutions, but they are just going after financial innovation. So of course, interest rate is not evil, or the credit default swaps if they are properly regulated, but they were not properly regulated because regulators were slower than innovation. Of course, with there are other examples when the corporation was a new financial innovation, then it also led to chaos because inside trading, for example, was possible. So this is one. This is very true that it is only a very small part of the solution to somehow regulate financial institutions, and then fiscal policy at the European level would be a much more important step to financial stability, at least in Europe. But the real question, and also which economists should think about, is what institutions are possible which can provide even solutions for global problems like global warming, which is very, very hard to solve because of well-known economic problems that every country, that it is a prisoner's dilemma, that every country somehow is only contributing to a small amount to the global warming, but altogether this leads to a very serious problem. So that is the question, whether there are real working institutions which can be implemented, and whether and how big change does it require in terms of democracy and in terms of capitalism.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's take the example of debt. In the past time, let's take feudalism. If you were a king and you indebted yourself, or you spoil your own currency by inflating it with artificial or with copper, you knew that you're destroying your own currency, and you're indebting your own sons. So that was sort of the limits of monetary and fiscal policy in those days. It was your heritage. Now we have, thank God, we have democracy, but these institutions still work in the old way. In other words, I, being a current politician, can indebt the country perfectly without having any responsibility for it in the future. This is the prime advantage of democracy, is that our leaders are responsible for 4 years only. But they're not. And that's why we need to change the institution of fiscal policy, because it's inappropriate. It worked somehow in the past, when you knew that my chateau will be sold if my sons will not be able to pay back the debts. Another philosophical point, and then I will get to the practical applications, is this whole idea of institutions. This is something that Ivan Illich, which was an Austrian anthropologist, philosopher, said. Today we have sort of vomited or extrapolized our internal ethics into institutions. So we don't have to care for the old because we have the pension system. And if there's something wrong with the old, we blame the pension system. We don't have to care for the sick, even though it's our beauty, because we've built institutions, because in the modern world we need... So institutions now carry moral weight. They look like they don't, but they do. The whole role of institutions is to be sort of invisible. This is the beauty trick of the invisible hand of the market. The invisible hand of the market, let's say, works if it is supported by an army of very invisible clerks. Try to remove the antitrust office and you will run to collapse. Try to remove the building bureau in your beautiful city and the city will be spoiled in 5 years. So it looks like everything is natural, everything is spontaneous, yes, but you have this army, literally an army of clerks, which is taking, what, maybe 40% of your GDP, whose role is to seem invisible and support the natural flow of something that isn't really natural. So what happens here is, the social encyclicals call this sinful nature, sinful structure. You have a structure in which everybody's trying to do good, consumer pools, sociologists. I mean, I'm very happy, and I truly am very happy for the critique, and I think that artists understand the current system more than we do, because arts have been very critical of the capitalist system for a very long time. If we didn't have art, we would look forward to Monday morning so that we can increase a little bit more of GDP. It's the movies that make us, you know, be a little bit punk, and at least, you know, not wear a tie on Friday afternoon. This is because we've seen Pulp Fiction and because we've seen the Fight Club. We are, you know, I'm not going to wear a tie. And that's, you know, anyway, I'm exaggerating. So the thing is, artists are criticizing and yet contributing to the system. Sociologists are criticizing and yet contributing, because it's the sociologists who go asking you whether you like the yogurt mixed with the marmalade or not mixed with the marmalade. We don't do this. And economists, again, we construct the system and we also criticize the system. This is the problem, you know, we often say it works theoretically, but it doesn't work practically. In fact, we should say it the other way around. It works practically, but it doesn't work theoretically. Okay, things fall down, okay, but why? Is it because of Newton? Is it because of angels are pushing it down, which is what Thomas Aquinas thought? Or is it because quantum? We don't know. We see the practice, we see trade, but we don't know the theory. And the problem is, it seems to work when it works, and it doesn't work when it doesn't work. And we don't know in which situation we are right now. We actually don't know, to be quite honest, whether the system works, which is many of your points, because if you take a certain angle, it looks perfect. Tomorrow you're gonna wake up and you're gonna have coffee from Kuala Lumpur, and I mean, the system works. And then, you see a beggar on the street, and then, oh, the system doesn't work. So this is sort of the basic psychological discrepancy. We don't know whether the system actually functions. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Now we are in a critical mode, and we're trying to make it function better. So the question isn't really whether the system works or not, but whether the system works the way we want it to work. And the problem with this, the first one is a positive question, and the second one is a normative question. And I don't want to go much into the methodology, but we don't really know how we would like it to work, but little better than this, because this could lead to a collapse. And I would like to just be scaring you, but it already happened in many countries. If it wouldn't be for artificial safeguards, your country and other countries would actually be bankrupt, and the real trouble would materialize.
And let's focus a bit on happiness and the public good, which is, well, some would at least argue that it's a bit important than GDP. That is there a way to be happy with less consumption? It's like so many things direct in the way that consumption is bad. Most acts of consumption are unfair environmentally. If we, sacrifice at least a part of our unnecessary consumptions, that'd be more sustainable environmentally, that might be more sustainable economically, but can it make us happy?
So now there are attempts to get rid of GDP and come up with a better statistic, which I think is a great thing, and we should pursue that. But again, I'm going 2 levels down here, and my question is, why do we need to measure it? Do you know if you're 3.4% happier than last year?
No, not really.
Are you happier than last year?
Yeah, most of the time.
See, it's difficult even to say whether you're happier or not, and let alone by how much. But we somehow need to have a number. I don't know if you've read...
Why?
The beautiful explanation, I think, this is a long story, it started in Greeks. We sort of feel that number has more power than anything else. Today I was with my friends in TV, and they said, let's try to test the microphone. And I said, why does everybody start counting when they're testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3? Or if I ask my students, give me an example of absolute truth. 99% of the time they say 1 + 1 = 2. I say, why do you pick on numbers? Or why can't you say, I like yogurts? Or I love my girlfriend? Or something that's actually true. Because 1 + 1 = 2 is true only because someone told you. And you spend a lot of time learning it, by the way. If you just think back into your first, and you got a lot of for it. No, it's not 3. Why does it have to be 2? Shut up, it's 2.